Payday series was one of the biggest cooperative shooter video games ever. The release of Payday 3 should have been the biggest event in the series for a million different reasons. We were blown away by early trailers, music revealed, and new enemy designs. But when the game launched, it became clear that it was more of a monkey's paw. The release of Payday 3 was the biggest event in the series, for all the wrong reasons. In less than 24 hours after Payday 3's release, the entire community collapsed into complete anarchy and vitriol, which somehow is only the tip of the iceberg, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I go over the complete meltdown that is Payday 3, we need to look backwards a little bit and discover just how far Payday 3 fell. The Payday games are a bit notorious in the co-op gaming scene, being heavily inspired by the Left 4 Dead series, while nearly perfecting the formula in its first iteration, Payday the Heist. Payday the Heist is an incredibly polished game even by today's standards. Created back in a time when monetizing games was an afterthought, and 90% of the team went home eating ramen noodles as a result. That's not a joke, by the way. Simon Vickland actually personally told me that. Payday the One, like the rest of the series, is a 4-player co-op game where you rob banks, blow up bridges, and destroy entire hospital wings. The goal is to manage your resources, protected by your regenerating armor that is restored while hiding in cover, while securing delicious loot. The average game takes about 20 minutes with a standard squad. It's played peer-to-peer with one player as the host, and it had simple progression that relied on you completing challenges and securing objective items like money. The game is incredibly tight in its design, relying on you learning the simple gameplay loop of shoot cop, lose armor, hide to regenerate armor, shoot cop. I really want to emphasize this first. Payday the Heist was a polished game from the beginning, with strong game design principles, well-structured maps for the gameplay, and very little bloated systems. You got on, you pressed play, and you played. There were 2 DLC releases in the lifespan of Payday the Heist, resulting in a total of 9 heists. And trust me, a lot of this is going to be relevant soon. A few years later, along comes Payday 2. Payday 2, on launch, was actually not fantastic. The game still ran peer-to-peer, so playing it wasn't a problem. It was visually an upgrade from Payday the Heist. It had a small selection of guns, and 10 release heists that were really more like 9 heists, since one of them was a reused map. I don't actually want to focus too much on launch though, because this is a video about Payday 3, so we need to focus on the game on a bit of a wider scale. While Payday 2 had a slightly rocky launch, as I mentioned, the support for it was unmatched for a game at the time. Within the first 2 years of Payday 2's life, it received 20 heists, increased its weapon count to over double what it had at launch, added melee weapons instead of just a quick melee, added an entire new skill page, and added perk decks, which essentially specialize your character to a playstyle alongside your skills. I can't stress enough, Payday 2 moved through the first 2 years of its lifespan like a train, adding content left and right for people to enjoy. This became the standard going forward, with the game getting over 200 updates in its 10-year run. And trust me, this is about to be very relevant to Payday 3 as well. Probably the biggest point people bring up about the first 2 Payday games is the replayability. Payday the Heist is so polished it feels great to replay levels. Think like Left 4 Dead. While Payday 2 has so much variety and build differences, you could play the same heist 50 different ways. I know I didn't hit this too much, but we'll talk replayability a lot in a moment. Anyway, Payday the Heist and Payday 2 were critically mid, scoring around 70% on any given review site. However, to the people, the Payday franchise was something huge. Everyone recognized the iconic music, the boys would come home to run heists for hours, and the community was explosive with content, fan animations, and much more. Today, these 2 games sit around 90% and 93% review scores respectively, and are remembered fondly by hundreds of thousands of players, whether that's the actual game or the content created by the community. Don't even get me started on mods. But again, this video isn't about Payday the Heist and Payday 2. It's about Payday 3. Now that you know how tall the reputation was built up by Payday the Heist and Payday 2, let's talk about how it all came crumbling down. For Gold Edition purchasers, myself included, Payday 3 launched on September 18th, 2023. This was a 3-day early access period where basically nothing went wrong, the game was enjoyed, and many people were blissfully unaware of some of the underlying issues the game held. Content creators were going hard at making videos about heists, weapons, best practices, builds, the whole 9 yards. And this is fresh off of those same content creators creating hype videos before the game even released, talking about how great it was going to be. Then, D-Day hit. September 21st greeted Standard Edition owners with the dreaded Nebula error screen. That's right, for those of you that don't know, Payday 3 is an online-only game, and I say is because it still is, and we'll hit more on that a little bit later. I really keep saying that a lot. About 70,000 Steam players and many more uncountable console players all tried to get on the game on launch day. As soon as the game launched, the servers took a fat, steaming dump all over the floor, resulting in not a few hours, not a whole night, but weeks of pain and suffering for anybody trying to play the game. That's right, the game everyone was anticipating as the successor to Payday 2 wasn't even playable for anyone right off the rip. But surely, Starbreeze would get such a monumental issue handled right away, right? Stop having hope. It's not a happy ending. We'll talk about lack of communication in a little bit, but for now, let's talk about the actual game's reception when people could play it after a week or two. Surely things can't get worse for Payday 3 after the servers make the game entirely unplayable for up to a few weeks, right? New armor design, while reminiscent of the attrition gameplay of Payday the Heist and early Payday 2, was not loved by the community. It was immediately compared to Call of Duty, and rightfully so. Payday 3's armor system at launch was almost entirely different than the one everyone had come to love from the first two games. You now had armor plates that, when broken, never came back. That means when you're out of armor, you're out of armor. No more holding out forever if you're a talented marksman, no more surviving clutch situations because you barely kept in cover long enough to regenerate all your armor, and no more long heists. This was probably the second biggest thing everyone talked about, the other one being the dreaded O word. Next up, people realized the skill system isn't fantastic. See, in Payday 2, there was a lot of potential for specialized builds, ranging from medics who were good at reviving team members and restoring the amount of times you can be incapacitated, to machine gunners with infinite ammo thanks to their ammo bags. All of that was basically done away with in Payday 3's skill line system, which made the most overpowered skills in the game available for a measly 2 points each. That means you could be the tank healer, damage dealer on every single build relatively easily. Editor me here. I feel like I didn't explain this super well, so for all you Payday 2 players out there, it's essentially like being able to do this. You put 1 point into the skill tree, and then take the strongest skill at the very top, bypassing the rest of the tree. It was also an issue that a clear meta had formed, where you could take strong skills and also always have a backup armor bag to restore the strongest, most valuable asset. Essentially, everyone could be the strongest guy on the field with no downsides. Also, let's talk about the progression system. The progression system was a pretty hot topic for most people, to the point where it was eventually changed, and now it's too fast, mind you. Your level, and thus your ability to use skill points and builds, was tied to challenges. That means you had to play everything in the game to even get skill points. I personally timed myself casually playing the game from level 1, and it took me about 60 hours to reach level 100, giving me all available skill points for builds. As someone who had already made it to level 100 prior to that run, I already knew exactly what to do for leveling up. The average player sadly did not, opting instead to use boring and cheesy strategies to level up via kill funnels. Where my bathroom strat homies at. Needless to say, progression made a lot of people mad. Finally, people hate the replayability of Payday 3, or I should say, the lack of replayability. Nearly every heist plays out the exact same way every time, and when every build feels the exact same, you get bored really fast. Keycards were only ever in 2 locations, guards always walked the same paths, the camera room and the server room were always in the same 2 locations, etc. There was no randomization, no chance for the vault door to randomly be open, no locked doors on certain runs, nothing was interesting after playing a heist once or twice. Simply put, there was no reason to stick around and play Payday 3 for more than about 20 hours, which people had put in hundreds or even thousands in the previous titles. People expected a forever game with Payday 3, but they got something far too simple. Also, for those of you that know, I'm not even going to bring up circles. Circle jump scare. One good thing I'll mention though is that difficulty scaling was interesting and good. Enemies took the same number of bullets to defeat on each difficulty, but higher difficulties had more regular and special enemies. This made moving up difficulties feel pretty decent as far as I can tell. I'm not entirely sure on this because I played nothing but Overkill from heist number 1 on day 1, but I never see it complained about really. It's also worth mentioning that stealth was completely overhauled for the better from Payday 2. Though the lack of randomization still hurt that bit a lot. So, some of the systems in the game weren't great, but that's okay. Like Payday 2, the devs can take feedback and make changes, add content, and balance things as needed. So surely that's what happened for Payday 3, right? You're still holding on to hope. I'm gonna need you to let that go real quick. Before we go any further, you are legally required to subscribe to my channel after making it this far into the video. Payday 3's first several months were marred with radio silence and false promises. Much of the communication came in the form of blog posts on the Payday the Game website. You can find a full record of these in the description, and that's where I pulled a lot of the information for this video. To give you a little timeline, I mentioned that Payday 3 launched on September 21st, 2023. To an overwhelming server failure. While there was little news to be found on social media, the first official announcement came via blog post on October 25th, 2023. That's over a full month after the launch of the game, by the way. This blog was very light on details, stating the next patch, which was essentially the day 1 patch intending to fix bugs and make some minor changes, was sent off for console certification. They also made sure to throw in a "we're sorry for the silence" at the end. The patch was later deployed on November 2nd, bringing several fixes including giving players their paid-for special edition cosmetics. Mostly. PlayStation players even to this day are still missing some of their items unless they're lying to me directly. Also, I want you to remember that phrase, console certification, because that's the excuse the developers use quite often for why updates are delayed. I'm not saying that's not the reason, but it is brought up very, very often. And to clarify what I mean by that, console certification is the process by Sony and Microsoft that requires developers to send off their patch to be approved before it can be applied to the game. This is a very annoying process developers have to go through regularly, but I want you to think about how often you hear that excuse used by other developers as to why a patch has been delayed. What I'm trying to say here is Starbreeze is especially bad about planning ahead of time, meaning they're working really close to the deadline, and if console certification doesn't get accepted, the patch gets delayed, even though they've already announced the patch is coming out soon. Now, I'm not here to go over every single update, but I wanted you to see what kind of start Starbreeze got for this game, because it set a pretty good example going forward. Speeding through a few things here, we got 2 legacy heists from Payday 2 that were pretty well received about a month later on November 30th. Then the first paid DLC, Syntax Error, on December 12th. Syntax Error, like all of the paid DLCs in Year 1, brought several new weapons, a heist, cosmetics, and a variety of fixes and changes. This was a good run for Payday 3, as the developers promised and delivered on 2 content updates in a row, which felt fantastic at the time. But of course, you've seen the title of the video, and all does not end well. This is the part of the story we have to talk about, Operation Medic Bag. If you're an old Rainbow Six Siege player like myself, you probably just groaned out loud seeing that name. Operation Medic Bag is exactly like the Rainbow Six Siege Operation Health. It promised to focus on the health of the game by changing systems like progression, some skills, and adding the biggest request the community had since launch, offline mode. Holy crap, have I really not brought up offline mode yet? Much of the community was incredibly angry after the server debacle on launch day, so the developers promised, as part of Operation Medic Bag, to implement a way to play the game offline in case the servers ever go down or the game reaches the end of its lifespan. Please remember offline mode until the end of the video. Anyway, Operation Medic Bag promised a ton of changes that you can see here on the screen, ranging from UI changes to server stability. I'll save you a little time and cross out everything that was actually implemented, so you can see all the false promises. That's right. Anything you see that's not crossed out hasn't been done yet. Operation Medic Bag started in January 2024, is claimed by the devs to be completed, and it's currently August of 2025 at the time of writing this video. A huge success if you ask me. Diving a little deeper, Operation Medic Bag was an incredibly slow process that caused major issues for the community. The actual new content took a backseat while the game was fixed. Many fans compared this to playing an early access title, even though Payday 3 was touted as a full release game. I'm going to call special attention to one portion of Operation Medic Bag that was especially bad for Starbreeze and the community alike, and that's the ammo funnel incident. In my opinion, this was the major turning point for Payday 3. For those of you guys that have been on my channel before, don't worry, I'm not going to go crazy here. It's necessary to bring it up, and I won't give my opinion on it any further. The ammo funnel incident was essentially a proposed change to the most overpowered skill in the game by the lead game designer, Mio. A blog was released detailing the nerfing of this skill used by basically everyone in every build, as we mentioned earlier, because it was crowding the developers out of making interesting, new skills around reloading. For those who don't know, ammo funnel takes ammo from slain enemies and puts it right back into your magazine, effectively making you fire forever without the need to reload. This causes issues with balancing the game, so Mio proposed a change to it. The community backlash was immense, thanks in part to many Starbreeze partners, not me, claiming this was the worst possible change in their personal videos released at the same time as the blog. A primary claim is that the developers were removing the fun from the game. This resulted in a Twitter fight between a partner and the game director acting unprofessionally, which inevitably led to the overturning of the decision to nerf ammo funnel. I believe this is incredibly important to bring up, as there have not been any skill changes made since this proposed update. I believe this event set the precedent that the community can control the developers if they yell loud enough, and it has resulted in the potential cancellation of things that were to come in Operation Medic Bag. Essentially, the developers became too afraid to make significant changes for fear of community backlash, and dissenting partner opinions helping fuel said community backlash. Also, that last part about partners fueling the community sentiment came directly from a Noli video, so don't shoot the messenger. Anyway, Operation Medic Bag essentially had its full run from January 2024 to June 2024, during which time very little was added to the game. For free, the community received a new grenade, a new skill line, which is about 6 new skills, albeit a very fun and unique skill line, some additional false promises about offline mode even existing, and the actual addition of a solo mode beta. Real quick, I want to hit a little bit more on solo mode beta. This is supposed to be part 1 of the 2-part installment of offline mode. It was added to test how the game runs on your computer instead of the servers, but it requires an internet connection, which is the issue a lot of people have with no offline mode. Offline mode has only been talked about on Twitter since solo mode has been added, even though they said they intend to put a blog post out about offline mode at some point. And that funny Twitter post I keep using responding to ChatGPT hasn't actually come true yet. The coming weeks has been several months at this point. I'm a firm believer that offline mode doesn't exist and never will exist. Operation Medic Bag had a soft completion when Boys in Blue, aka DLC number 2, was released on June 27th, 2024. The actual end of Operation Medic Bag seems to be August 2024, but it kinda just fizzled out and stopped existing at that point. So we'll go with the Boys in Blue release in late June. With this DLC came a returning character from Payday 2, Clover, alongside many new guns and the Boys in Blue heist. This update was incredibly well received, with the heist being touted as a favorite by much of the community, and the hype leading up to it being some of the craziest I've ever seen. The patch was intensely delayed by server instability issues the day of release, but all things considered it was a very good day to be a Payday fan. This portion of Payday 3's development was actually so memorable, I interviewed somebody that I think was responsible for a lot of the hype and the memes around Boys in Blue. That's right. I spoke to Mario in a top hat for about 15 minutes, and we had a short interview talking about Boys in Blue. Here's some of the important clips from that right now. Would you consider Boys in Blue the golden age for Payday 3, and was there a better point in the game's life, if not?
It's like part of me wants to say that, yeah, but at the same time, I remember like Houston Breakout and the free heist that came with it, that seemed to be technically one of the high points, I think, in terms of player count and just people being excited for a bit. I think for the memes, yeah, like, you know, people were like, "Oh, are we gonna do this for like every update?" And it's like, no, because Boys in Blue is just funny. It was just funny. It was the absurdity of like that donut. Like, it was just a donut. We didn't know what the heist was gonna look like, and then we had no news for God knows how long. I mean, the actual update for Boys in Blue was, it was pretty fun. I liked it. I think it was a good addition, and it had a lot of good weapons. But end of the day, you call it a golden age, maybe, like, for a meme. I mean, I look back quite fondly on it, even to this day.
Did you play Boys in Blue early? If yes, was that part of the reason you were hyping it up so much?
No, I'm pretty sure like the hype began before I even knew anything about it. Like, I said, the image of the donut and the fact that I think we all went a little bit psychotic because there was no contact about anything. There was no real things happening for about what felt like 3 months. Maybe it was more, maybe it was less. We had the Operation Medic bag, and then there was just nothing. We had an ready button at some point, I think, and then no info, no nothing. And we're like, isn't this coming out soon? So no, actually, no. There was no like, oh my god, playing it, this is going to be the best, which made it even funnier when it came out. It was actually all right. Maybe, I don't know. I really don't know. You couldn't separate it from that whole thing. Like, I can't objectively speak on it because even if it was complete dog shit, I think I would have probably like been like, we're back, you know, Boys in Blue. I just think the name Boys in Blue is just funny. They got lucky.
I think that's an interesting insight, just because you were putting so much into it at the time, and that's why I wanted to just talk to you a little bit about it.
Well, to set the record straight, it wasn't just me. Like, it wasn't me making the GIFs. It was an idea that stemmed from, and I'm going to see if I can find you one.
The weekend plans GIFs were everywhere.
That just stuck with me because I think that was like an actual marketing campaign. I was just like, what if we just did that with Boys in Blue? But no, I don't want to act like I did everything myself. I mean, without the community and other people contributing. I mean, some people did some crazy shit. Like, truthfully, I don't think I made a single GIF because I don't know how to do that shit.
Yeah, me either.
But I made that video, the Boys in Blue one. That was literally like, that was the beginning of the brain rot saga, I think.
This one I have written down. I'm not trying to ask a loaded question here. I'm just genuinely wondering what your thoughts on the game improving around this era are. So the question is, think back to the state of the game around Boys in Blue. Were you optimistic about it improving, or were there signs that anything was going downhill already?
I think we were just on the Boys in Blue Kool-Aid, you know? Like, I think that the fact that we finally got a heist and new weapons and just stuff like that, even like new outfits to play around with, and Clover, right? Clover was around that time.
Yeah, she came out with Boys in Blue.
That whole era, I actually think, was basically buying time, because they would usually get another update out before you had to think about the actual state of the game. So at that time, you know, I would say you can count the oil room, I think, as an example of seeing things that are going downhill.
Holy crap, I didn't put the oil room in my script.
You gotta mention how the oil room actually got worse.
Yes.
In the next update. Like, somehow that happened.
With
also,
my
the server issues, you know, at launch on that didn't exactly help. I remember that. That's another good one, because that actually nearly broke my heart. I remember launch day, I couldn't play it. Now,
this video isn't meant to be much of an opinion piece, but here are my 2 cents. Operation Medic Bag was something that was definitely needed, but implemented in a way that crushed Payday 3's player retention. The lack of content over this important 6-month period drove many people away, and they haven't come back. The game became healthier, but much of Operation Medic Bag was updates that the wider community considered par for the course, meaning it should have all been done before the game even launched. I mean, working servers, an unready button, that's all simple stuff that was in the previous game. Anyway, I digress. Let's move on to some more shortcomings. Now we're going to talk about some failed events, significantly less investment, and all the one-sided collaborations. I'm going to toot my own horn a little bit here. The first event I want to talk about is Community Day, which was something I actually created with Elizabeth, the community manager. This started out as an event run solely by me, but after reaching out and working with Elizabeth, we were able to implement things like double XP weekends, double cash weekends, and even more. If you remember any of those, I'm the guy that helped start those up, with a lot of help from Elizabeth, by the way. I'm gonna consider these the only successful events in the lifespan of Payday 3 because, while very simple, they spiked the player counts up and were well received by the community. A real big win for the Luckster. On the other end, we have an example of a failed event in Mask Mania. This event took place in July 2024 and tracked in-game completions of heists by the community, allowing you to decide which mask you wanted to race to unlock first from a selection of 4. On the surface, this event sounded incredible, but the community quickly realized how flawed it was. The idea was that earning cash on specific heists made progress toward unlocking a mask tied to that heist, which sounds cool until you realize the game only had 8 of the 11 heists participating in the event. That means if you wanted to unlock Gearhead Grudge, for example, your job was to play Road Rage and 99 boxes for an entire week straight. Oh, you like the look of the mask, but you don't like either of those heists? Too bad, idiot. This event went through, and I quote, 5 iterations via 3 concept artists, 7 marketing creatives, and 4 approvers. So it's perfect and you're out of luck. It should probably go without saying, but people were not happy with the way this all worked out. But at least Starbreeze promised to give out the 3 runner-up masks at a later date via in-game challenges. The winner, Shakedown Shark, was released to the public shortly after the event was over in late July. The rest are currently in the game files, but completely inaccessible to the community over a year later. And no, they haven't been mentioned since. No, you should not expect to ever receive these masks. Yes, it's incredibly disappointing as the partner responsible for Gearhead Grudge. Yes, I still think about this every night. I miss him. That's pretty much it for events. I've had so little interest in the game that I haven't kept up with Community Day at all. And there haven't been any in-game events since Mask Mania. Again, like the ammo funnel incident, backlash was so bad I think the devs are either afraid to do more or they're just that understaffed. Speaking of understaffed, let's talk about Starbreeze reports. One way the community gets their news is from quarterly Starbreeze shareholder reports. These discuss the financial status of Starbreeze as well as the current status of their employees. We learned from one of these reports in late 2024 that as of November 2024, Starbreeze has plans for, and I quote, significantly lower levels of investment in Payday 3. This was a crushing blow to the community, and showed that even though the final 2 DLC packs for Year 1 had released to decent reviews, that was it. The team working on Payday 3 was going to be cut down, and the quality of content we were getting was only going to diminish further. And as a reminder, a lot of these Operation Medic Bag items haven't been talked about in months at this point. Offline mode is missing, some minor changes were missing, and some of the updates that were done weren't very high quality, namely the UI overhaul, which just put a fancy coat of paint on the already horrible user interface experience. The lower level of investment announcement was just the icing on the cake at this point, showing that the decline was going to continue. Speaking of lower investment levels, let's mention where a lot of the developers that were working on Payday 3 have gone. We know from Starbreeze reports that a large portion of the team has been moved over to working on Project Baxter, a Dungeons & Dragons game that Starbreeze has already been contracted to make. As well, a portion of the team has been moved over to work on a PUBG collaboration for some sort of heist game mode set to release in 2026. Yes, that PUBG. Now you may be wondering, if they're doing crossovers with things like PUBG, surely there are some kickbacks coming to Payday 3. Maybe some guns or outfits from PUBG. Well, my friend, you'll be excited to know that every single collaboration Payday 3 has had has been one-sided. What that means is other games are getting stuff while Payday 3 is paid in exposure. These include 2 operator skins given to Rainbow Six Siege, and several outfits being added to Tom Clancy's The Division 2. Are we seeing a little Ubisoft pattern there? And the coolest part about all this is that we know exactly why these one-sided collaborations happen. Another Starbreeze report shows that, then CEO Mats Yule thinks that partnering with Krafton shows strength and attractiveness of the Payday intellectual property. Basically, Starbreeze higher-ups are intent on making Payday 3 look good over actually making Payday 3 good. Do with that information what you will, but I don't think that's a good sign. On the subject of bad signs, let's go over a few quick ones. Dedicated Payday creators known as Starbreeze partners have been ending their agreements with Starbreeze and leaving the program. These include names like Red Archer Live, Lil Guy G, and even really big names like Mario and a Top Hat. Sorry to call you out like that, Top Hat. I call him Top Hat because we're friends. The remaining partners don't have much to say or do these days, as updates are incredibly spaced out. Another bad sign, Almir Listo, the global brand director, left the Starbreeze team a few months ago. Almir had been with the team since the early 2010s, and even worked on Payday the Heist. As far as I can tell, he was one of the last OG developers on the team, but he had a rapid exit after announcing his departure in June 2025. Overall, the general public has a very negative association with Payday 3. Reddit posts about biggest disappointments in major subreddits like r/gaming show commenters declaring Payday 3 as one of the biggest disappointments for a lot of people. The official Payday Twitter account runs their mouth too much, with the infamous "Hey ChatGPT, we'll talk about offline mode soon" tweet that hasn't been talked about. Yes, by the way, we're in August 2025 at the time I'm writing this, and there's still no new info on offline mode that was mentioned in Operation Medic Bag back in January 2024. Quality of content is not being controlled from what the public is seeing. For example, we had a teaser trailer recently released that had a completely disarmed Chains. This trailer was then released again a week later with an updated Chains. We're pretty caught up to the present now, so let's wrap up the state of things and where they are now. I had to reorder this section a little bit, so sorry if it's disjointed. I think it would be really rude of me not to mention Armor 2.0, which released 3 months ago in May 2025. This was the last major update for the game, overhauling the armor system everyone complained about over a year and a half prior at launch. While reception seems to have been relatively positive, this major change to a core system didn't retain players at all according to the Steam charts. While it was previously stated that console players carry the player count according to Starbreeze, this was also at a time when the game was on Xbox Game Pass and PlayStation Plus respectively. I believe the Steam charts are a decent indicator as to who's playing Payday 3 these days, and Armor 2.0 did not retain players very well, leading to only about a 20% increase on the already small number of players. And I just checked it again, it's September 3rd right now. The numbers are at an all-time low, so do with that what you will. Again, not to throw my opinion too far out there, but Armor 2.0 was also poorly implemented, with the game not being designed around a majority of the overhaul, resulting in a mess of balancing across the board. The game is far too easy now, so players like me don't get to have any fun at all, even what should be the worst of armor setups. The final update of Year 2, Delivery Charge, has essentially been delayed to Year 3. This comes after Starbreeze released that trailer in early August featuring armless Chains as previously mentioned, which is an expected level of quality at this point. The teaser has no release date attached to it, but the roadmap on the website shows an August release date for Delivery Charge. When the trailer was re-released a week later with the now armed Chains in mid to late August, the roadmap was also updated to show a September date now. This is yet another delay and very on brand for Starbreeze at this point. This delay was also preceded by over a month of complete silence, though this is also pretty on brand for Swedish developers as they typically take a month vacation during the summer. They also take a 2-week vacation every week. Recently, it has also come out via developer live streams that the only thing in this update is a paid heist, even though the music teaser from late August and a previous trailer shows a new gun, most likely intended for this update but delayed inevitably. Indefinitely. Stupid. This is a very poor look, as previous heists of this magnitude released with weapons, outfits, masks, and sometimes even more. As well, the new Delivery Charge Heist seems to be exclusively using reused assets and systems, including Road Rage's car escorting and Syntax Error's drone cameras. This, to me, indicates they are very limited on resources allocated to making new heists. The reuse of systems was a selling point for the Party Powder heist released in Year 2, though I think this is just a product of good marketing. We just put all the stuff we already made into a new heist, have fun, doesn't indicate good things to me resource-wise. A little coverage of stuff we glanced over or skipped before we conclude. Payday 3 Year 1 had 4 DLC packs released, Syntax Error a few months after the launch of the game, a large gap in content updates from Operation Medic Bag, then Boys in Blue, Houston Breakout, and Fear and Greed, to end off Year 1 in September 2024. We also received 1 free heist in Diamond District after DLC 3. Year 2 got off to a really slow start, this is when we heard about that significantly lower level of investment, but it had some positives. Another legacy heist, First World Bank, released in mid-December 2024, and was then followed by some game system changes, namely the overkill weapon system. This is the point in the timeline where things began slowing down a lot, with the Jacket character pack, which is another reused bit of content from Payday 2, though Jacket is a fan favorite and was received well, releasing in February 2025, the Party Powder heist in late May, and finally, Delivery Charge at the end of Year 2 in September 2025. This is clearly a rewrite. That other section I'm pretty sure said it's basically Year 3 content. I'm leaving this in. Needless to say, the momentum has been completely lost, and already at the end of Year 2, we're getting just a heist in place of Year 1's entire DLC packs. Updates are much smaller and limited to about once every 3 months, and the trend is only getting worse with Delivery Charge clearly being delayed by a few weeks. Originally, the video ended right here. However, after I recorded everything on September 3rd, some new information came out on September 4th for Delivery Charge. So I'm adding a special section right here. A trailer for Delivery Charge came out and the description for the video showed that the heist was releasing on September 10th. The video showcased a bit of poor editing, where there were about 6 shots of walking into the same vault in a row. I kid you not, it was just like that scene from Taken where Liam Neeson jumps over the fence and they used every shot. The trailer was up for about an hour, and then they released the trailer again with the shots removed. Once again, displaying that they don't know how to make trailers and release them right the first time. We're also going to talk about a now recurring issue I touched on a bit earlier. Starbreeze is letting those in the partner program post content for updates far too early. And if you look on their Twitter, they're even celebrating it and using it as free marketing. When I say content, I mean literally the entire heist in loud and stealth in one video a week before the release. It was bad enough that developer livestreams were showing off a bit too much, but this is the second heist in a row where they've allowed partners to release entire playthroughs of the heist before the public even has their hands on it. This has caused issues and excitement for the update as everything is revealed before the general public can even explore it, as well as caused a decline in small creators wanting to cover the game. Armor 2.0, for example, should have had a lot of theory crafting and build videos built around it, as it overhauled an entire system with modular armor. However, it was barely covered by any small creators, as partners were able to post videos in advance before it came out. This means most of the best builds were already created and posted on YouTube before the update even hit the masses. I really think it's important to talk about this, because community interaction and content was such a core part of Payday 2, and it's remembered fondly as a key part of Payday 2's lifespan. Heck, even Starbreeze knows about it because it's part of their mission statement. Payday 3 content will be remembered as the Starbreeze Partner Show. And to give some more context, I already told Starbreeze and the partners why this isn't a good idea. I told them before it even happened the first time, but Starbreeze clearly didn't listen, and the partners even defended the practice directly to me. I wonder why they would do that. And that's it. We're caught up to today. Payday 3 fell, and it fell hard. The first two games in the franchise set Payday 3 up for a massive success, and through a cascade of errors and mismanagement, it failed miserably. Players wanted an extension of Payday 2, and what they got was a buggy mess that drove the formula away from the extremely dedicated fanbase. Couple this with the horrible server issues, empty promises, and radio silence, and you can see why Payday 3 failed. It pains me to say it, but I think Payday 3's poor performance has killed the Payday franchise for good. I don't know where we go from here. All I know is Payday 3 is deceased in the eyes of not only the Payday 2 community, but the general public. Truly, through a mess of management and incompetent leadership, we have seen the downfall of not just Payday 3, but maybe even the downfall of Payday. And on that somber note, thank you for watching all the way through this video. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. If you want to support further, please share this video with your friends and check me out over on Twitch or YouTube Live. And above all else, make sure you have a good one. Subscribe.